Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. We're solving problems left and right, but one we can't get our heads around is our immigration crisis. And we all got a little nervous when we started to hear that, you know, what's going to happen is they're going to take some of these migrants, they're going to send them to South Florida, certain areas. And our governor stepped in and said, wait a second.
Well, yeah, there was a big story last week that came out that essentially they're running out of room in the border area of El Paso, Texas, the Centro area, which is the main border crossing area. We've covered that area before and talked to some of the officials that work down there. But they were planning to hire some contractors. So the news came out because they obviously put out a federal request for proposal to hire contractors to fly about 250,000 people throughout the U.S., essentially resettling them from the temporary housing that exists at the border areas because they're out of space for them. Mm-hmm. Because remember, we don't have a crisis at our border. There's not 100,000 people a month coming over. Oh, yes, there are. There's 100,000 people a month getting caught coming over. Those are just the ones getting caught. Now, I do think they're probably catching the majority of them. But that's a lot. I mean, we've got a huge crisis. And remember what they do. All these people want to apply for asylum, even though they haven't followed international law and they haven't done it properly. So they basically set them free in the United States with a notice to appear at some point in the future for their asylum hearing, their immigration hearing, which the vast majority of folks never show up for. So they're basically just releasing them into the country to live here, what will be permanently. At this time, it's completely illegally, but, you know, we don't know what exactly the future holds. But, I mean, think about what a farce this makes of our immigration system. I mean, what a joke this is that it's actually easier to get into our country by just forcing your way in. And then essentially the law will let you do that and let you go and live somewhere. The heck, we'll even fly you there and drop you off. We'll let you into our country, and then you just hang out until your hearing, even though most of you won't even come back to your hearing. And we already know that. We're going to pretend we're going to perpetuate this farce, this falsehood that you're actually coming back to your hearing one day when we know you're not. So it's much easier to emigrate to America that way than it would be to actually apply, where you might have to meet some criteria and other things. But no. The fastest, easiest, and the way that you're certain that you'll get in, right? You just force your way in. What kind of a system is that? That's a very sad joke of a system.
You're forgetting the most important part. Each one is a potential vote.
Exactly. You're never more of a citizen, as President Obama said, than when you go and vote, right? That's what makes you an American citizen, whether you're allowed to or not. And, of course, we have information, back when Stacey Abrams said that the blue wave that was coming, remember the one that elected her governor of Georgia? She still says she won, right, even though she lost by 50,000 plus votes. In her mind, she won because of things like voter suppression. No doubt the blue wave, which she said would include both documented and undocumented workers, which means illegal aliens. And, of course, we played for you folks the commercial that President Obama did around the time of the election, encouraging them, saying, we're not going to enforce any laws. You go and you vote. You're never more of a citizen than when you vote in our elections. Well, so the story came out. They're going to fly this 250,000 migrants all around our country, and some of them they apparently were going to fly down to the tip of Florida, put them down in South Florida. Well, people hit the roof about this in Florida. I mean, we have taken on our fair share of refugees from other countries in the last several years, and there's been some strain to our state economy, frankly, from that. It involves the hurricane, and we had a lot of folks that came over from Puerto Rico, and we have incorporated them into our school systems and everything else. But you look at the Orlando housing market, and you can see you can't even get a house over there because there's so many people came at once that it's difficult. It's put some strain on the services. But in this case, our governor, what a blessing to have a governor who's got a good relationship with the president, because he got wind of this. Apparently picked up the phone, called President Trump, this is Governor Ron DeSantis, and said, stop. You can't do this to us. We don't want these migrants flown down to South Florida, Mr. President. Did you know this was going on? And if so, you must stop. And basically the answer was no, President Trump didn't have any direct involvement in this decision. And he totally concurs with Governor DeSantis that he's not going to do it. So they immediately changed course. And now even the ICE officials are saying, absolutely not. We're not taking any of these folks to Florida.
Rather, they're going to San Diego and Texas.
Yeah, we'll take them to California instead, which is, I mean, California, the West Coast, I mean, that's where they talk about wanting more of these people and the fact that it's an act of love and all this other stuff. I mean, that's where, I don't know if you heard the story, but Motel 6 was apparently giving ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, information about their people who had booked rooms at Motel 6 with Hispanic names. They wound up paying about $12 million to the state of Washington because the state of Washington sued Motel 6 for doing that, for violating and I'd say rights here, except for, I mean, non-citizens, what exact rights are they entitled to? But nevertheless, we'll say blank, for violating the blank of these people who were staying at Motel 6.
But wait a second. Wouldn't they be upholding the law? Or if they're asked questions about, don't you have to answer questions to law enforcement?
Hello? I mean, that's what I would think. I mean, in your bank, I mean, whole know your customer laws with the banks. I mean, isn't the bank supposed to report you if they think you might be laundering money or if there's any what they call suspicious activity? Also known as you try to withdraw too much of the money that they don't think is yours, even though it's in your, quote unquote, in your account. Well, apparently, in some cases on the West Coast or the left coast of America, if you do try to follow the law or enforce the law or assist law enforcement, you're actually committing an act that will put you at odds with the local government. I mean, that's hard to believe. Anyway, that's what happened to Motel 6. So, they're not bringing these immigrants to the state of Florida. I think that's really good. I think, by the way, it's a little unfair to call them immigrants. That's just my belief, because I don't think immigrants force their way into places. Those are more like stowaways. I don't know, some word that involves something more than application and following the proper channels. But one of the things I wanted to point out, because this other story just came out, they've had a pilot program at the border for about the last 2 weeks where they've been swabbing people's DNA, ostensibly to check to see about family units. And I think that's why they're doing it. I don't have any reason to believe that they're collecting all of that DNA information somewhere, although they could be. But ostensibly it's to check for family units. Well, here's the headline that you should know about. 30% of the children who are being brought over as part of a family unit apparently don't share any DNA with the so-called family unit. Now, we've heard stories that have been reported on that people are actually renting children on the southern side of the border. So, hey, you need to be a family to get in? Here, you want to rent my child for a couple of weeks? You can use them to get yourself across the border as a family unit and then just ship them back to me. And apparently, this is what people are actually doing. It's kind of hard to believe that, isn't it, Pat George?
It's unbelievable. I didn't even know about this part of it. This is a big twist.
So, they've just started, and they just started back at the beginning of this month. They started this DNA pilot program, and of the people that they've tested, again, a full third of them have not been a family unit, have not been related. I think that's pretty telling about what's really going on here when we're talking about folks coming in as family units, and President Trump is separating families. He's taking children away from their parents. So wrong. Well, I say at least give them a DNA test first and make sure they're actually the child's parents, right? I mean, before we let them into the country and just release them and say, you know what? Take the child who's not yours into this country that's not yours and do whatever you want. In fact, we'll fly you out there. Do whatever you want, because we can't effectively enforce our laws against you. We hamstring any companies that try to assist us in any way. And so, what do we expect we're going to get from that? I mean, what do you think, Roxanne?
I'm still stunned by that Motel 6 story because, again, you have a company that's trying to do their ethics in business, and ethics would be under the category of answer questions in regards to law enforcement and keeping our city community safe. And then they get hit with that kind of lawsuit from Washington.
Mm-hmm. It's like it
sets a precedence.
It turns the world upside down, doesn't it? It makes everything topsy-turvy, where up is down and down is up, and communicating with law enforcement, which should be good, is now made bad.
It makes you not want to leave the light on for them.
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.